Hey y'all, happy Sunday and welcome to this week's live Q&A session. This is the portion of the show where we allow YouTube to send out notifications that we're going live. If you're watching this live Q&A on replay, please scrub ahead until this graphic disappears and the actual show begins. If you're watching live and you have any comments or questions, please go ahead and put them in the live chat. But for now, grab a beverage, sit back, and relax while the countdown timer does its thing. Then we'll get started. Howdy, everybody. Happy Sunday. I hope all my friends out here in the U.S. had a good Thanksgiving with friends and family or whatever you do for Thanksgiving. And I hope everybody not celebrating Had a great week. Oh man, busy, busy, getting ready for the great C word back here on the router. Got a bunch of glue ups to do when we're finished here. Then I'll have a good head start on the big holiday. Hope everybody's getting ready. We're less than a month away. So, yeah. When I put the edited videos on hiatus for over the holidays, I try to have a topic to discuss during these live Q&As. And sometimes I even succeed. Some of those subjects are provided by you folks in the chat, and others are provided by questions I get. And this wasn't a direct question to me, but it was a post in one of the many Facebook groups I'm a member of, and I thought, you know what, that is a good topic for discussion because it's a very short subject, but it's something that I bet a lot of us have never thought of. And that is simple editing of G code. If you're anything like me, when you mount your material, set your XY datum, install the bits, set your Z0, and fire everything up and get going. When that G code is finished running, the spindle is, or the gantry is going to return the center of that bit to your XY datum position, to that 0 point, your home position. And the first thing I do is send the Z up a little bit and I move the gantry and spindle out of the way. And somebody asked, is there a way we can do that automatically? And yeah, there is, with some very simple G code editing. Now, let me preface this by saying I'm not out to give you the impression that I'm an expert on G code, because far from it. I know just enough to make myself dangerous. Okay. I do not write G code. I very rarely edit G code, but sometimes this comes in handy if especially if it's a large piece. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and bring up a piece of G code here and show you what I'm talking about. But first I need to bring it up. Okay, this is a very small, simple G code file that is basically used to surface a piece of material. And very simple file, very short. And we'll get into it and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, before we do get into the editing, I will just explain one or two things. Up here we have the header, and you'll see that, for instance, toolpaths used in this file, and all of this info up here is in parentheses. That is a signal to the CNC controller that anything that is in these parentheses here is a comment. That's meant for us to read. It's not meant for the controller to read. So the controller isn't going to read anything in the parentheses. It's just going to skip it. It's just going to go down here to the first line that isn't in parentheses, and that's where it's going to start reading. Okay. And there are various codes in here for various things. I'm not going to get into this up in here. What I'm going to concern myself with and focus myself on are the last few lines of code down here. Now, these are the codes here down in this area to shut off the spindle, let it run down, move the reset the controller, and reset the G code up to the top line. What I'm going to look at are these two lines of code right here. Here we have the last line of G code. That's the last line that is actually physically cutting in the material. Okay? Right here we have two lines that are identical. And that is a G00, which tells the controller that this is a rapid move. It's going to raise the Z to 1/4 inch above the material height. So you see the Z 0.25. It's going to lift up to 1/4 inch above the material surface. Then we've got another G00, which is the command for another rapid move. It's going to go to X0, Y0. That's when the machine is going to move back to the home position where the G code started from. Then it'll shut down the spindle and reset the G code and jump back up to the top, reset everything. Well, instead of taking the controller and raising up that Z about another 3 inches, and then moving the gantry out of the way manually, why not let the machine do that automatically? The way we can do that is right here on these two lines. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that 0 and I'm going to make it move instead to 3¼ inches above the material height. So it's going to lift up that Z higher. Then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to look at, in this comment, my maximum program extents. Okay? The maximum program extents are in the X. It's going to go 8½ inches wide. So that tells me the spindle is going to be over the material for 8½ inches in X. And Y 24 inches, which tells me the Y is going to be, the spindle is still going to be over that piece of material 24 inches from the front edge. So what I can do is I can add just a little bit to these two numbers here and move that gantry out of the way for me after the G code is finished running. So I'm going to move my X over to 15 inches. So I'll just highlight that 0 and type in 15. And I want to move the Y back to where the gantry will clear that piece of material so I can lift it off. So my max extent here is 24 inches. I'll take it to 26 inches. 26. Okay? So now I've got my Z lifting up to 3¼ inches, my X moving over to 15, and my Y moving to 26 in the positive. Now, if I save that G code file, then pull up Mach 4, and this is not hooked up to a CNC router. This is just for demonstration. When I load that G code, it's right there. I look down here and I see the green is where the bit is down inside the material. It's doing its machining. Then it will lift up and it's going to move over to that position, 15 inches off to the right and 26 inches away from the front edge of the material, so that it is out of my way as soon as this is done cutting. So that's just a handy little thing that you can do without, I see Russell is saying that G code is the language of the gods that make the magic smoke that must never be allowed to escape. Kind of, but not kind of. Um, it is it's just an instruction. It's a set of coordinates. All I'm doing, I'm not changing what the file is doing. Get over on correct monitor. I'm not changing what this G code file is doing. I'm just changing where it's doing it. It's still going to lift that Z up and it's still going to make a final move. So that's all it's doing. Now, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, then no call, no foul. You don't have to change a thing. It just, somebody asked about it and it occurred to me that he's absolutely right. So instead of letting that machine come travel all the way back to the XY origin, why not tell it to move out of the way? So Peter Van Vliet makes an excellent point. You need to make sure that you're in absolute mode G90 and not relative. If we look up here, the first line of G code, there is G90 right there. That is absolute. Also, make sure that you have homed your machine. So, there is a lot to get into. There is a lot to go through to understand all of this G code, but basically, you don't really need to understand everything about G code to do this. Now, I also have to say, keep in mind the actual size of your machine. Where do you see the G91, Peter? Oh, yep, sure enough. There's G91 relative. You're right. But again, I'm moving it relative to my work coordinates. So this is still applicable. If I was using machine coordinates, I would definitely want to use the G90. But since I'm using work coordinates, this is relative. You're right. I confused myself there. But you don't need to know all of this G code. You don't need to know what anything means in order to make this simple change. If you are not comfortable doing it, don't do it. But it's a simple way of allowing the machine to do the work that you're going to pick up your controller and do, or walk over to your keyboard and do. So it's just a simple thing. Now, I can tell you a few things about the G code. Basically, F is a feed rate. And in this case, the feed rate is its movement to the 0, 0 position in work coordinates. Let's see here. What's another good one here? G1 is under. No, this is wrong. Relative is not relative to a coordinate set. Relative movements are relative to the previous position. Yes, you're right about. No, you're right about that. You are right. See, I know I'm confusing myself here again. Relative is relative to the yes, to a previous position. Back up, regroup. Yes, relative is relative to the last position. Correct. However, this is going to move to absolute coordinates. For instance, x10 would move 10 distance units with respect to where you were before. Correct. Correct. However, This is in work coordinates and will move to that work coordinate position. Absolute. It will move to that absolute coordinate position. I've been doing it. I just haven't recorded it. I have been doing it. Let's see. Did we get into anything else? No, we didn't get into anything else. Okay. Let's see here. G1, a G1 command is under control of the controller and following G code. G0 is a rapid movement. G1 is under the control of the controller at the feed rate. So, while when using absolute movement, it would move the said coordinate on the current WCS. I don't understand what you're trying to say, IL. G1 is a feed move. Yeah, that's what I just said. It's a movement under control of the controller at the feed rate that you've set in. So, okay, work coordinate says, okay, I see what you mean. While when using absolute movement, it would move the said coordinate on the current work coordinate system. Yes. G1 is modal. Once you set the speed with the feed rate modifier, yes, we're getting too deep in the weeds here. This is that, and that's exactly what I said. You have a feed rate. That's the feed rate it's going to follow with under a G1. Excuse me. So. Wow. So, let's see. Again, I'm not an expert in G code, and I'm not an expert in all of the commands, but I can tell you that that kind of a modification does 100% work, and it will move at the jog rate, not at the feed rate. And if you look at Mach 4, I can't speak for Mach 3. I can't speak for other controller systems, but this runs 3 separate speeds in that you have the feed rate, which is set by your G code. You have a rapid rate, which is set in your motor tuning. Then you have a jog rate, which you're doing on your controller or your keyboard. And the software keeps track of all of that separately. So just a little tip here. So now IL makes a good point up here where he said people should also be aware that there are many variants of G code, though there are many common commands. Absolutely. Every controller is slightly different. There are symbols used in Mach 3 and Mach 4 that are not used in, let's say, Gerbil controllers, or in other types of controllers, or some of the proprietary controllers like Laguna or other brands. So not every command is exactly the same as what I just showed right here. So let's see what we got here. G53 is to use the machine coordinate system. It's not a movement command. Correct. Correct. Let's see here. No, don't have it. I don't see it in Mach 4, but in Mach 3, you have the ability. There is a button down at the bottom corner that you can. That button, I believe it says machine codes or G code table. You just click on that and it'll open it up and it'll tell you what all these G codes mean. So, let's see here. Are you able to override the speed manually on your spindle controller? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Let me go back over here to Mach 4. Now that's not what I said to do. I'm going to need to reprogram that button, it looks like. Let's go here. We go to there. Mach 4, that's much better. I can override the spindle speed right here. I can either bump it up incrementally here, 25% with every bump, reset it to max, or I can set it here before I start the spindle. Let's say 16,000, and that sets 100% there. So, yes, short answer is I can control all, and I can increase feed rates and jog rates here as well if I need to. So, let's see here. Brooks Martin says that Notepad++ is an excellent text editor. Yes, it is, and it has a lot more features than standard Notepad. And some of which are good, some of which I don't think I've ever used, but that is I believe it's third party. I don't think it's made by Microsoft. I may be wrong. It's called Notepad. Whoops. It's called Notepad++. If you do a Google search for it, you'll find it. And it really is excellent. Let's see here, Peter Van Vliet. So you can change the rates and speed while the job is running? Yes. Which would override what the G code file has? Yes. And I do that all the time. If I have a feed rate, for instance, in the sample G code, I had a feed rate of 180. I let it start at that, and then I let it start at that feed rate, and then I'll increase the feed rate on the fly and go from there. Every piece of material is a little bit different, and if I can speed it up, I'll do that. If I need to slow it down for some reason, I can do that if I'm getting chatter or what have you. So, okay. Let's see. We got some discussion in here about what a G53 is. So, that's great. G54 is a work offset. Let's see here. Back to sharing that screen here. This is one of the things I like about Mach 4 is it made all this much easier. G54 is a work offset. And G54 through G59 plus G92 are work offsets that you can enter. So, and you have a full fixture table that you can go into, which of course it put over there. And you can use, I mean, there are 200 and I don't remember exactly how many work offsets there are. 200 and some odd, I believe. Or 200 and, I want to say 254, but I may be wrong on that. So, okay, let's see. Let's close here. Okay, how do you run the same G code on more than one coordinate system? Well, you can run the same G code on different work offsets, but it's the same coordinate system. And that is simply, let me go back to Mach 4 here. And For instance, I can set up different work offsets. Uh, for instance, I can set up a G55 right on the edge of the left-hand edge of the table, then come over, I'm just picking numbers out of thin air, 15 inches, and set up another work offset on G56, then another one on G57, 15 inches over. And then all I have to do is, if I have homed my machine before I do this, uh, mount the material on all the places where I have these work offsets, and then start the G code, apply that first offset, run the G code. Then when it's finished, apply the second offset, run the G code, and then go on down the line. So, and I plan on making a video about that. So, okay, let's see here. Still some discussion about what a G53 is, and I never meant to start an argument, guys. So I tread softly when I do stuff like this. But what if you want to run all without stopping? Well, you can set that up in your CAD CAM software. And for instance, if you have a 4x4 machine like mine, I could set up a piece of material 4x4 that represents the table, and then draw rectangles that represent each piece of material, and then get into vector selection order and select the vectors on one and just have it move down the line, you know. So select one, run it, select the next one, run it, select the next one, run it, you know. So, and I'm sure if you get hot and heavy into editing G code, you can figure out a way of modifying a G code to make it do absolutely that. So, but you need to be real specific in your locations, and will real accurate in your placement. So, kind of sort of like an array toolpath. Yes, Russell, but you really have to be specific on where you have to be able to mount your material exactly where you told the software you're going to place that material. Because if you're off just a little bit, if you're off a millimeter, then whatever you carve in that piece of material is going to be off by a millimeter. So unless you're using oversized, you can array toolpaths. I didn't even think about it, and thank you for reminding me of that. So no, David, you don't have to copy all the vectors. You could do that, specifically if you're talking about doing multiples of one thing. That's where the array copy toolpath comes in. If you're talking about doing several different, um, you're talking about several different patterns, then you could arrange them that way. And I think Tom has the comment of the day. My wife, who does medical coding, says that G codes to her are diagnosis codes. Listening to this is making her crazy. Well, that is that's legit. Um, Writing myself a note here. David says, "Can you show us the array toolpath?" I did a video on it. I'll put a link to it down in the description of this video. I did a video on that. It's been close to a year now. And as soon as we're done live, I'll put a link to it down in the description here. So Steve Rose says, remember when using Mach 4 offsets, if you re-zero while the offset is selected, it will reset those parameters. Yes, it will. And that's why I don't do that. Let's see here. For instance, in my video on using a fixture offset and creating a work offset, I created one fixture offset on my table so far, and that is a G59 offset. And that I made it G59 so I wouldn't accidentally select G54 when I was over here working in this. I guess it's just paying attention to detail, but I know me. If there's a way I can mess it up, I will. The first 10 minutes of this live stream is evidence of that. Confused myself. So when I'm using that location on the table, I set the G59 offset and the X and Y values are here. The Z is always going to change because your Z, you're going to reset your Z0 every time you put in a different bit. So when Mach 3 and Mach 4 start, they automatically default to G54 offset. Automatically. Now, if you are going to use different locations on your table every time, I would leave that offset at 0. So when you start it up and when you go outside to run a file, start up the machine, you home it, come into your offsets tab and 0 everything out. That way you can use your touch plate or however you set your X and Y work origin. You can do that and it won't apply this offset here. Just make sure you 0 it out. And when you close it, Mach 4 will remember this work offset. Mach 3 would ask you. It would pop up save fixture, and you would say yes or no. I always said no when I was using the G54 offset. So, all right. Let's see. We have some other questions. Let me get over. Let's see. Are the fixture offsets from G54 or machine home? They're from machine home. So let's see here. Bill Zowak wants to know, is that a 48 by 48 behind you? Yes. Any regrets not going bigger? No. Mine would just be a home shop, maybe some kitchen cabinets, but I don't foresee much more than that as far as any commercial production may go. My issue here was space. This is a 12 by 16 shop. I'm up against the front wall right now. And while I can't reach back and touch my machine, I'm not very far from it. So space is at a premium here. This is a 4x4 because I simply could not go bigger. So I have no regrets at all over this machine. None. So let's see here. And yes, you can tile a 4x8 sheet if you have space behind the CNC to do so. I don't. I can go about 6 feet and that's about it. So, because otherwise the material will hit the back wall, and no, that's not a good thing. Let's see. Many seem to think that G codes are Grizzly catalog numbers. Sometimes they are. Let's see now here. Matthew wants to know, do I have any videos on inlay toolpaths? No, not yet. That's one of the things that I am going to change after the new year. I plan on getting into some wood inlays, and we're going to experiment together. And we'll see. I'll succeed or fail. We'll see. But right now I have nothing on inlays at all, other than the epoxy inlays that I did this year. So let's see here. I would say for a hobby shop where you may do a cabinet or two and you're not really thinking about seriously getting into some heavy production, a 4x4 is fine. Having said that, it is cheaper to buy a 4x8 than it is to modify a 4x4. If you have the room, if you have the space and have the budget, then yes, a 4x8 would be a better choice. I just simply don't have the space. If I had the space to dedicate to it, then I would have gone with a 4x8 machine. Now, having said that, I know several people who built their own CNC router, and they built 4x8s and regretted it, because what they ended up with was the world's most expensive storage table and project table. Uh, if you're not doing a lot of cabinetry or surfacing slabs or working with large materials, it's kind of wasted space. And I would say about 90% of what I do is in an envelope that's about, well, it's been getting bigger here, so I'm going to say about 16 by 24. So technically, I could have gotten away with a 24 by 48. But you know how it goes. You start pricing things and you think, well, while I'm at it, the price to buy isn't that much more expensive. The price to expand is. So if you have the real estate and you have the budget, then I would say go for I would have gone with the 4x8. So let's see here. Uh, Blake Williamson says, can you explain adaptive machining? No. Sorry, I am not a machinist, and I have not used adaptive machining at all. I don't even know the definition, the true definition. It's just not something I have gotten into. So I'm a wood guy, and yeah, I think I can wrap my head around some of the basic concepts of adaptive machining, but I have zero experience with it, and I'm not really sure how it works. So, let's see here. Norman Peterson wants to know, do you know if spray cans of shellac are different than the liquid? They can be. The can doesn't say anything about waxed. Maybe you cannot spray a waxed shellac. Um, I know that Zinser Bullseye spray shellac advertises itself as wax free. Um, from what I gather, and I don't know this to be 100% fact, the wax tends to plug up the nozzle a lot quicker. If so, they tend to run wax free. Zinser Bullseye spray shellac. I can't speak for other brands. So let's see. Brooke says adaptive machining is typically used when individual components in a batch have slight geometric differences. Okay. These components often require blending and or polishing operations that count on the skill and dexterity of the human hand. Yeah, well, that Writes me out of the equation. Now, I know that Fusion 360 it does offer adaptive machining, and but I never got deep enough into Fusion 360 to explore that to see what that actually means. So, to me, Fusion 360 was just as bad as AutoCAD in that the learning curve was almost vertical without having an instructor right there to kind of walk me through it. And I was introduced, I've told this story before, I was introduced to the PC and to AutoCAD the same week in 1997. And I've forgotten more about AutoCAD than I ever used. I only used it for about 2 years. And then I haven't touched it since. So, show you how long ago that was. My version of AutoCAD came on a series of the 3.5-inch floppy disks, a stack of them about that tall. So, it's been a while. Let's see here. Hopefully that answered that, Norman. Generally speaking, uh, at least Zenzer Bullseye spray shellac is wax free. Let's see here. Brooks says sometimes while working in the modeling tab, the software gets in a mode where it will not allow me to highlight a component. Any thoughts? Let me get over here and bring up Aspire and let's see if I can recreate that. Let me shut off your comment. Sorry about that. And let's go over here. In the modeling tab, well, let me put something out here. Let's go with a dish. Let's do that dish. And let's make it bigger. And then let's go up and find a critter. Let's do the eagle. And let's make that a little bigger. All right, now let's go into the modeling tab. And we've got the eagle mounted on the on top of the dome. So you say it's a rare occurrence. Okay. It's not letting you select out here or out here on the in the 3D view or in the 2D view. In none of those locations. Um, in that case, I would save as and restart unless the entire program is not responding for some reason. Uh, uh, but I've not had that happen. Now, I will say that since the release of 11.5 and uh, their improvements to the way Aspire or VCarve displays 3D artwork, it does use a lot more resources than it did. So I've noticed on my main computer in the house, it has really slowed things down. So it's a matter of what all I have running in the background. If I've got, 11 web browser windows open, which is usually the case, and 6 or 8 tabs on each one of those windows open, which is usually the case, it will slow it way down and I'll get a lot more of those up here. It'll say not responding. And then I get the spinning circle of doom, not death, just doom that says it's taking a while to think about it. So it is starting to become more of a resource hog. Still not as bad as most other 3D programs, but it's getting there. So but yeah, you should be able to select it in one of those ways. Out here in the 3D view, you have to double click the component to select it. Here, if you just single click, it doesn't do anything. You have to double click the component. So let's see. And then you should be able to select out here. I get that you're saying with multiple levels and multiple components on each level. But let me ask you this. Are you using Aspire or are you using VCarve? Let's see, Brooke says in version 11, I first noticed that and brought it to Vectric support. They said thank you and fixed it. Maybe not. Well, that's possible. And Tom Button pops in. He says he's experienced it too, along with some other operations as well, likely due to increased reliance on graphics processor. Okay. Okay, so you're using Aspire 11.5. Take a page out of Michael Mazalik, the 3D guru. Take a page out of his book. When he has something like this, for instance, this, I'll go ahead and do it on here. Hold down Shift and click on both of them. Select all of those components, come up and copy the visible model to a single component. This is assuming you have everything set right. You've got all of your, let me move it out of the way there. That is now one single component. This is still two. So if I turn those off and bring this one back over onto the material, it's now one single component. This is not available in VCarve Desktop or VCarve Pro. This is only available in Aspire. But the great thing about that also, Brooks, another tip for you here, is once you have done that, you can now go up here to Model and export that as 3D clip art. So if you use that a lot, you know, well, I see what you're saying here. Let me go ahead and shut this one off, turn this one on. And I believe you can select the level. Let's see. Yes, I just selected the level. I didn't check mark either one of those. It, let me turn those off. There we go. So I'm not moving that around. I just selected the level and it copied everything in that level. So it does work. Let me go ahead and turn this one on. Delete it. And we'll delete this. And we'll turn these two back on because Tom Bunton is asking, how does this differ from baking? Well, let's find out because I'll be honest, I'm not sure. So let's select both of these and then we'll bake into a single new component. Okay, that's what it is. That's the difference. Baking them combines the two into one. Making a, I see, I can't undo that, can I? Yes, I can. All right, perfect. That combines the two where creating a component creates a copy but leaves these two separate. So that's the difference, Tom. So you're not actually changing the two components themselves. You're just simply making a copy of the two and putting those together. Let's see. Shape height isn't locked in the copy. Okay. No, shape height isn't locked unless you lock it. I can adjust it. And remember, shape height is this push-pull knob. Base height is this one. So some fun stuff to play with. So, and it does come in handy if you're an Aspire user. Again, I can take this copy, I can rename it, and let's call it, where'd it go? There it is. Domed Eagle. And then I can, with it selected, the only one being selected, I can export that as 3D clip art into my 3D clip art library. So I'm not going to do it because I don't really use it much. So let's go back over here and we'll get rid of it all. Don't need it. And back over here to the drawing tab. Let's see here. Don Futrell wants to know, is there a way to change the grain direction of the material in the 3D view in VCarve Pro? I did a video on that. The short answer is no. You have to add new materials. So you can go into the material folder, copy the materials that are there, import them into an imaging software, turn them, and then save them. That's kind of a thumbnail sketch of how to do it. Let's see. I did a video on it, and I'm going to make a note to myself right now to post a link to that video, put it down in the description of this video as soon as we're done here. So give me about 10 minutes after we finish here live, and I'll put that link in the description. Let's see. Material and preview. And that is, I believe it's also in the same video that I showed how to make custom backgrounds. Like we have this blue, kind of a purplish bluish faded background here. I imported a photo of the back of my house and then did a 3D carving and put that on the back of my house. So, that's also an option. And I believe those two are the same video. So we'll get into that. Okay, John Thompson says, can you answer Colorado Woodward's second comment? Okay, well, I will look and see. Got to go back up and find it. Colorado woodworking. Okay, I see. Is there a way to do a fluting pocket? Kind of. I have looked into using the fluting toolpath to make ramps, etc. Now, let me find a piece of scrap here. And just imagine this is wider. If you are trying to make a sloped pocket that will, let's say, yeah, real straight drawing, Mark. Let's say I want to make a fluted pocket in this right here. You can do it, but there's no way to program a profile pass that'll come around and clean up the edges. You're going to have the cusps of where that bit comes down and touches on the top and on the bottom. There is no way to program a profile pass in there. Now, if your pocket is going to go outside of the material, it's not really that big of a deal. But if you are trying to, for instance, pocket out within the piece of material itself, you're going to end up doing some manual cleanup. And that's a problem to me. So. So let's see here. Okay, and this will be my last question that I have time to get to today. I'm using a rope border and filling it with some text, as well as several 3D vectors that require clipping. What's the procedure for clipping inside a 3D vector using a VCarve Pro? You can't. You can about the only thing, the only editing you can do in VCarve is scaling, thickness, size, things of that nature. VCarve Pro is not 3D editing software and never was. Um, that would require Aspire, and even then, Aspire doesn't use. Well, it does. Man, it's kind of hard to explain. Aspire is a bitmap and pixel based 3D modeling program that doesn't use triangulation or NURBS or any of that other good stuff. For that, I would recommend Rhino or one of the other 3D modeling programs. This is bitmap based 3D modeling. And VCarve is very, very limited when it comes to editing 3D. You're basically down to size and thickness. I mean, you can tilt and, fade and do things like that. But as far as heavy duty editing, that's not something for VCarve. You would require Aspire. I'm not even sure that level clipping is available in VCarve. I don't know that. I don't know if you can do level clipping in VCarve. I know it's available in Aspire, but I think that was introduced in, I want to say either 10.0 or 10.5. And the way you would find out in VCarve, let me go here. Again, I'm not sure if it's available in VCarve or not. Go over here to the modeling tab and right click, and there is clipping. You can either apply, update, or remove. And I have done a video on that, but I think that's Aspire only. I may be wrong there. I don't think it's available in VCarve. So let's see here. Okay, that is it. Oh no, here's one here. What brand of end mills do you use or recommend? Anything other than the big brand names? Short answer is yes. I have no brand loyalty. I have no brand loyalty at all. I buy the tool for the job, and yeah, I do comparison shop as far as price is concerned, but I don't think that any one specific brand has I don't think any one specific brand is by default better than the other. Having said that, I also tend to support the bit makers and the bit suppliers that support the CNC community and are an active part of the CNC community. Case in point, Cadence Manufacturing, Cody, the maker of the Jenny bit, downtown Jenny and uptown Jenny and all the rest of them. Um, Cody is a good guy and he's very responsive. He's a part of the community. He makes these tools for hobby CNC machines. He doesn't make them for industrial machines. And if you have a question, you're talking to Cody. You're not talking to some person in a call center being paid by the hour. Same thing with Garrett Frome over at IDC Woodcrafts. These guys um, are part of the community. Sky One, they're another one who are a part of the community. So I tend to support the manufacturers and the makers who support the community themselves. So that's where I go. Having said that, I don't own a complete set of anybody's tools. Like I said, I buy the tool I need for the job at the time, and I don't buy sets. So, I mean, Amana tools are great, but try to talk to somebody at Amana. You know, um, let's see, Bosch tools are great, but try to talk to somebody at Bosch. You may get a reply to your email. So I tend to support the people who support me. And that's all I'll say about that. And I'll put links to those three makers, Sky One, Cadence Manufacturing, and IDC Woodcraft down in the description of this video as soon as I'm done. I just made myself a note here. And okay, so that's all we have time for today. Next week will be another live Q&A as everybody starts gearing up for Christmas. That'll be December 4th. Oh my God, where did the year go? And yeah, we'll give it a good go. I'll try to have another less controversial topic next week. But just know that if you're not comfortable with editing G code, then by all means, do not get in and modify your G code. But don't be afraid of it either. It's okay to create a G code file you never intend to run, and don't put a bit in the machine, load it, and run it. Create a simple surfacing tool path on a 12 by 12 space. Put your machine in the center where you know it's not going to hurt anything. You're not going to overrun your limits, be they limit switches or hard stops or physical limits of your machine, and try it. I mean, don't be afraid of it. The worst that can happen is it doesn't work and the machine's just going to go, WTF, I'm not doing nothing. So, I mean, just don't put a bit in it and don't let that spindle get down too low. Okay, so I will get these links put in there as quick as I can. Channel members tomorrow, members only live stream. You guys have supplied me with the topic. Brooks has a cool tip that he shared with me that I'm going to share with everybody, and we'll go from there. Your projects as well. If you would like information on how to become a channel member, just click the join button next to the subscribe button. A panel will pop up, a video will play, tell you all about channel membership. We have a good crew that comes in on Monday evenings. It's a lot of fun. I mean, we hoot and holler and have a great old time. So, members, I'll see you tomorrow evening, 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern. And everybody else, I'll see you next Sunday. Have a great week and don't stress. We'll make it through another one. We're almost there. Om. Breathe in, breathe out, move on. Y'all act like you almost believed that. Thanks very much, y'all, and I'll see you next week.